We would like to thank them for the privilege of living on their land and the gift of working with their children. Today is Tuesday, June the 24th, 2025, and this is a regular board meeting of Board of Education for Comox Valley Schools. And it is 7:02. And I look forward to trustee moving adoption of the agenda.
I can. That the Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley adopt the June 24th, 2025 public board meeting agenda as presented.
Thank you, Vice Chair Howe, and seconded by Trustee McConnell-Keene. Seeing no hands raised for discussion, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next is the board meeting minutes for May 27th. Trustee Leslie?
That the Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley adopt the May 27, 2025 regular public board meeting minutes as presented.
And the seconder, Trustee Aldinger, thank you. Seeing no hands raised for discussion, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Unfinished business, I will just touch on something we sort of touched on at our last meeting. And it was after the wonderful presentation we had regarding they call it the Special Olympics. And then the discussion about the hockey equipment. And just wanted to share that the district will be sending out thank yous to all of those connected to both of those programs. And the presenters provided us with a list of organizations, and we will be sending thank yous out. And I put it somewhere that's not with me right this second, so just bear with me, see if I can find it. Too many things. How fast I can do that. Or I might have to sort of go back. Let me move on to, oh no, there it is. I found it. I found it. Thank goodness these chairs have wheels. So there was a thank you to the Connects for Kids Fund, iSpark, One Ability Games, Set BC, and Pacific Sport Vancouver Island. And thank you, Trustee Caton, for reminding us of the importance of thank yous. So thank you for that. Moving on to the record of in-camera meeting minutes. May 27th, 2025, we had a regular in-camera meeting, and June 10th, 2025, a closed committee of the whole meeting. And in our agenda package of our jam-packed meeting tonight is my board chairperson report. And the only thing that I would like to add that I didn't include is that when our district had the opportunity to present to the Select Standing Committee, we brought the Bentwood box that's in the center of our room today to bring our students with us. And it also fit the additional 500,000 students that go to school in our public education system in British Columbia when we shared what we had to share. That wasn't included in the report, but I just wanted to share that, as well as to acknowledge that our students are here with us tonight, represented by the Bentwood box full of medicines that is on the beautiful rug that was given to us by Elder Ramona. And next, we have a Indigenous Education Year in Review presentation, and I would have our presenters come up, and our Associate Superintendent Joe Heslip and our Acting District Principal of Indigenous Education, Lelena Jules. Welcome.
Thank you. It's truly my honor and pleasure to be here to speak with you about Indigenous education. the update here, and I will take up very little space at the beginning here because I want to hold space for a very powerful Siam and mentor in so many ways. And I'm going to lift you up and thank you for being here and for grounding us with the cedar. And I'm going to step aside. And
Saying good words. Thank you for bringing the Bentwood box today to remind us why we're here. I brought something to remind us why we're here too. Inside this Bentwood box, you'll find some cedars that when I was young adolescents learned how to ask for guidance and support and grounding. So it is filled with pieces because I would like to ask that you join me in being grounded in a place where we are all guests. And so I'll pass it this way, take the piece that best calls to you, and feel free to look at it, to smell it, just to be with it, whatever you want to do with it, as we speak and share with you a little bit of what Indigenous education. Sometimes if I say next slide.
I can do that.
So again, Pleco, Upras, Puerto Pica, Lalena Jules, Mamakna Emily, Istakshish, Heshwi, Uish Ahus, Uish Denmark, Uish Estonia. My name is Klakopika. That's the name that's put on me. I also go by Lalena Jules. I'm a guest and visitor on the unceded and traditional territories of the Petmach, the Aixen, the Shotlut, and Sasitla. And I've been an invited guest here for over 7 years, almost 8 years coming up. And every time I have the privilege or the honor to honor this place, I think about things like the cedar that is being passed around, that the tree that I asked for these blessings from is over 100 years old, and what languages were spoken and what languages did it hear in this place that I don't get to call home now. This place that we get to service children, this place we get to service and support families. And I get real humbled real quickly, and I guess honored that there's still so much more to learn about what it's like to be a good guest here. And the reason why I brought in Nuu-chah-nulth language, where my ancestors come from, is because I want everybody to hear, and I want all living things here to know that I am a visitor here, and I do come here to be of service and to support Indigenous education, Indigenous students the best way that I can. And with that, I show lots of gratitude for all of those that came before us in upholding and nourishing and sustaining this place that we get the privilege to call home now. Oh, click. Yeah, and I had to 7 a.m. meetings, no notes. 7 p.m. meetings, I have to have already. My brain is not as young as it used to be. When Joe and I were thinking about what we would share with you in a limited amount of time, we had to start with the students, the reason why we're all here. And this year, Indigenous education has supported over 1,800 Indigenous students. And by supporting Indigenous students, this has guided our work as Indigenous education. Our Indigenous education team is diverse, dynamic, and the largest population of our team are Indigenous support workers. And our Indigenous support workers are very much anchored in the 4 goals of the Enhancement Agreement, which foster Indigenous students' sense of belonging, cultural identity, self-esteem. Goal number 2, foster academic success for all Indigenous students. Goal number 3, foster awareness for First Nations, Métis, Inuit culture teachings for all students. And goal number 4, foster Indigenous students' confidence and leadership. And so what we think about what community members have told us they want for their children and how we need to support their children. It also works for us too, and how we support each other and how we foster the work environment so that we can support Indigenous students the best way we can.
Okay, so I have the unpleasant task of following Lalina, and just want to speak with you about relationship. We're thinking, again, very high level. It's very difficult to talk about the whole year of INED. There was so many amazing things. So just thinking about relationship, and I include myself in this as well. We were developing new relationships, ways as a district to work alongside and work directly with rights holders, Indigenous families, the IEC, while at the same time strengthening and honoring those that we've been in reciprocal relationships with. So meaningfully collaborating with KFN. I know that we spoke earlier, had a presentation with regards to the LEA and the ongoing work that is, again, through the local enhancement agreement. Co-created events, there's deepening that relationship, that's key. Lifting up voices of the Indigenous Education Council, right? The IEC, empowering, lifting up those voices to make those decisions for all what we do as staff for Indigenous learners that we serve, right? For the targeted funds, empowering them to have all the decisions that they need to make in order to ensure that we're supporting the students the way we need to. Also lifting up through the equity scan, what a relationship building experience that's been for all of us. But for me, I want to thank Chetty McDonald when I was brand new coming in and I said, I've got big plans for this equity scan. She said, relationship first. And that means with all of you, right? That means with every single one of you, relationship must be built and earned. We cannot do this unless we are all together and in relationship. But in this room, we have had hereditary chiefs, First Nations, Métis, Inuit, all Indigenous rights holders here in this room, making that decision, going through every single one of those 187 scanning questions. It took time. It's taking time. And I'm glad it's not done at the end of June here, because it's a reminder to us that this is not going to be a one and done. So, and also I know that we might have mentioned this before, but it is the only, I know we're the last district to really dig in here, but it is the only district in the province that has an all Indigenous makeup. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal when we think about meaningful consultation, really doing it. So that's a very thoughtful process, and it's humbled me. And I just want to say, it's really, as someone who did this work across the province, it's really great to see what's possible when community leads the work that we're doing. So holding space for new structures, positions, the Indigenous Knowledge Specialist, we've spoken about that, Jesse Kwakwakolas here in this room, and his great work, bringing his deep knowledge and connecting us to place, to knowledge, language, the land. It's a year of beginnings, really. Building collective responsibility that I'm hoping that we're doing this tonight. This is not a show and tell. This is a call to action for every one of you. Right, and this is what we've been doing since we met with the principals and vice principals and all of you in this room when we did the Where I'm From exercise in August, where we connected in circle, and we always connect in circle in here. That's the way we do things. And so we're bringing people together, we're holding ourselves accountable, sharing with, as we mentioned earlier, with our principals and vice principals, the accountability of ensuring that we're living up to the LEA, following those responsibility for KFN student success meetings throughout the year. The senior team meets in circle each week, modeling ancient protocols, right? Going in circle, counterclockwise, as has been done for thousands of years here. Shared learning experiences for everyone here at the board office that many of my colleagues have shared. So Kathy Camilleri doing the village workshop, learning and leading from the heart, right? Chetty McDonald and Natasha Ranke sharing the cultural humility video, which has now sprung into a cultural humility advisory with rights holders, which will then advise all of our departments, all of us, everything that we do. That will be the work that we're doing. So it's the whole purpose of this is, yes, we're talking about INED, but every single one of you is responsible. You're responsible for ensuring that Indigenous students feel loved, respected, honored on this land. And this is the call to action for all of us, and we must continue.
Mhm.
Doesn't it? Next slide.
And of course, we can't not notice the year of transition. I figure the year that we don't feel uncomfortable about how fast things are moving or how much we have to change or adapt, we're behind. And so a year of transition, and Susan, you've reminded me this before, but that word, that that world of, like, you feel like the dissonance or that uncomfort or things are moving real fast, and to be okay. And when we have teachings and groundings in things that are a lot older than us, and the teachings that are going to continue past us, it's going to be okay. There have been new positions in Indigenous education this year. Chetty McDonald, for sure, our manager of Indigenous education. I've actually had 2 roles this year. I started off as the vice principal of Indigenous education, and now have the privilege of acting district principal. We've claimed Joe. I don't know if anybody else has tried to claim him yet, but you've heard it here. He belongs to Indigenous education. The superintendent has supported our work and really holding space. And as soon as there's some space, has advocated straight away on how we can do things in a way that much aligns with where we are and how to serve those that we say we're serving. Jeannie has stepped into the role of curriculum support teacher. We have a champion admin assistant named Tabitha from, I think it's Tsimshian, no, I think it's Tsimshian territory, I don't want to get it wrong. And Gwen Monet, our community and culture worker, and Joe has already talked about Jessie and our new Indigenous knowledge engagement specialist. And that, when we talk about the definition of reciprocity or being in a reciprocal relationship, that happens so fast. The team that has been in Indigenous education since September has really been in a reciprocal relationship with us. He's taught us a lot about what it's like to be here and how to be here in a better way. While at the same time, many of us who have been in education for a while have shared some of our pedagogies and ways of doing things in education too. And then, of course, with our colleague Bruce's quick departure, and then the quick arrival of Karma, who really stepped in and helped support Naloxi students and staff in a good way. And Joe had mentioned earlier too, I think he was looking at my notes. The mandated changes from the ministry for the IEC, and really feeling out that new relationship and the role of the secretariat and new ways of doing things. An example would be that now there are many questions on the interview panel that relate to Indigenous ways of knowing and being. And who knows that better than Indigenous folks? And so we've been going through the secretariat to ask if anybody from the IEC would like to sit on those interviews and things like that. And then, of course, physical moves. We moved locations from across the parking lot in the annex over to 607 Cumberland Road. And our online team has moved all the way out from Naloxi all the way out to Nides. And the team has been amazing. They're always adapting, they're always planning, they're always doing amazing work. And a little bit of highlights from this year it's the first time ever to have our 2 canoes in partnership with Lake Park Society, both named and blessed in Petlatch traditions. We called on the help from Jessie Rakelma and Andy Everson to lead that work with us. And those canoes were launched, blessed, and named up at the Comox Lake. Natasha Ranke and the team arranged for camp and students to come and learn about the canoes, to come and learn about the lake and the area and sit in the canoes. Unfortunately, it was a little too windy that day to take them for a spin. And then, of course, our continued work around getting all grade 11 students who are taking Indigenous focused classes into the Big House to receive Big House teachings. I think there's for sure over 900. I don't know the exact count. And all grade fours in the district to come in and receive the Big House experience. And then I talked about adapting and transition. We were also co-host with Susan Blucart, who came and spoke at a couple of our high schools, and many of her words and songs touched many students in a lot of meaningful ways. And then, of course, we've re-sparked again our song holders. As you all know, our school district has rights to a song, Amlala Kumukse. And so we've re-sparked, what does it mean to be a song holder? Does that mean you're a song teacher? What are the protocols that we're trying to follow that both align with being in a school district and everyone having access to it, while at the same time honoring the tradition and the importance that it's not just a song. And other big things that are happening, of course, the Warriors program. We still have a Healthy Ninoxala or Elder in Residence program, cultural presenters, and so much more. I have 45 more minutes, you said? And Joe talked about this is a year of truth and action for us as well. Acting on what the powerful words say in things like the enhancement agreement, the local education agreement, the strategic plan, UNDRIP, DRIPA, the TRC calls to action, and really trying to build and move towards building structures to support the work that needs to go to that action. When we talk about, okay, let's go bless a canoe, we know that if you just bless a canoe, that's all it is. But when you build relationships with those that hold the teachings that are a lot older than they are, in some cases they're over 500 years old, and you start to work with how these canoes are going to start to be utilized, and the knowledge that it can activate when somebody is just in a presence with that, when you learn how to show up to the canoe in the right way, when you learn the language that speaks to the parts of the canoe, when you learn how to be in a canoe, all those sorts of things don't just happen. So when you say something just as simple as blessing a canoe, no, there's many layers of honoring and valuing and building relationship to get to that point. And with any one of the things that I've mentioned today, all of those thoughtful pieces of work go into it. And so when we see something like the strategic plan that talks about decolonizing and indigenizing, it doesn't just happen. We can indigenize until we're blue in the face, but really we have to start to do some things differently to get that decolonizing part so that it can bring back those things that have been here a lot longer than us and keep going and not take those away from our children that are not yet to be born. And I think that I will pause there.
Okay, thank you. And you'll recall this slide was part of the, finished off the first presentation that we did with the board. And it asks you all and reminds you of some action and some homework. When was the last time that you were in ceremony? Who is your elder? Which is the elder that guides you? And can you speak over 10 words in the languages of the land that you work on? And have you been to the local First Nation, Friendship Center, Métis Chartered Community? Those are your 4 calls to action. And that's looking forward. So wherever you are on your continuum, please continue to do your work. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say and to reiterate that I am so pleased that I landed here and that I'm able to stand next to you and speak to all of you wonderful people at this time. Phones ringing or alarms going off or otherwise, we are so glad to be with you all.
It's not the trapdoor then.
Really, our time is up. I want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to share.
Mr. Hetlich and Gaila Kessler, and we do not do this work alone. We didn't get here. There's been people doing the work for a long time. Always in gratitude and debt to them too.
Thank you very much.
You might ask a question.
Yes, we could have another 45 minutes for sure, but we don't, or we shouldn't, if we want to get through the rest of the agenda. I'm just looking to see if trustees have anything else that they'd like to share, and if not, thank you again for the opportunity to learn and and relearn and to have our own calls of action. Oh, sorry.
Well, I just thought of it. I apologize. It's after the fact, but you've come back to the same questions or the calls to action for us to reflect on, and I guess I would love if there was a way that we could perhaps like have those more day to day in we're walking around the workplace, even almost like I would love. I think I fall short of reminding myself day to day what little pieces we can come back to sort of ground ourselves in the work. So I would be happy to see it more in like my day to day walk around when we're working and stuff. So thank you for those and for bringing them forward again and continuing to every time you join us.
Thank you. Thanks again. I am going to turn the chair over to Vice Chair Howe. I apologize, I have to leave for a couple of minutes, and she can continue chairing, and she'll do a great job. I'll be back.
Yeah, so number 8, strategic direction, learning services, and it's our superintendent district verbal report.
First, I just want to thank Joel and Elena, and I think, of course, it doesn't surprise me that they presented with so much humility and the reality that there's so much complexity to each of the pictures that were shown and each of the pieces that were spoken to. And I would say, knowing what I know about this year, that we only heard 5% of some of the great work. So just really wanted to acknowledge that and thank you both. And I also thank you, Elena, for cedar versus like seawater. This is a good way to be grounded here without a big mess, and just really grateful for the reminder of where we are and being rooted tonight with this cedar piece. So thank you. Tonight, I just wanted to acknowledge June is such a busy month, full of celebration, year-end events, recognition, and of course, graduations. And I just note that all of our graduations have concluded other than GP Vanny, which is tomorrow night. And they're just such a beautiful opportunity to witness young people embarking on that next stage, and just acknowledging that not only does it mark their success and their accomplishments, but the reflective work of families, of educators, support staff, and community partners who are part of this journey to guide students to this moment. And so we're deeply grateful to share in those accomplishments and to witness those successes. I just wanted to provide, because there's so many great events, I'm not going to go through them. I just want to provide a real quick summary tonight. One of the things that I'm really grateful for, and we just saw some evidence of it already tonight, that this year we have seen meaningful progress in the adoption and operationalization of our district strategic plan. These accomplishments reflect the incredible commitment of our dedicated people. And yet, as grateful as we are for that progress, we know that our work is far from finished. There are still students who do not yet feel fully included. There are gaps in achievement data that persist. Mental health, staff capacity continue to be real and pressing challenges. Communication from the school board office to the field and community needs to be enhanced and improved. And systemic barriers, whether they relate to race, ability, gender, or economic circumstance, require our sustained courage and attention. Our strategic plan provides the roadmap, but it will be our collective will, our relationships, our decisions, and our day-to-day actions that will determine how far we go. So I would like to finish tonight by thanking a group that is often overlooked in their work in our district, which is our trustees. For your commitment to student success and well-being, your governance and dedication and support of the strategic plan are instrumental in keeping the focus on what matters most, ensuring that every learner is known, supported, and inspired to thrive. As we head into summer, I look forward to building on the momentum and returning in the fall ready to take those next steps together with purpose, humility, and with hope. Wish everyone a wonderful summer break, and a special thank you to the staff who continue to work hard over the next 2 months to have our schools ready to once again welcome everyone back in September. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. Our next item is NIDES 2024-2025 External Program Review Summary Briefing Note. Jay Dixon, welcome.
So in your package, there's a briefing note that has an update for NIDE's district program. Review that was initiated during this school year by an external consultant. I just wanted to make a note that the attachment, the second page, the executive summary, was written by the external consultant, not myself. What's attached to my given its scale and provincial reach, NIDES plays a significant role in delivering flexible learning options across BC. In October, we initiated a review of the school's operations to support a clear understanding moving forward of its functions and to inform future planning within our district context. NIDES leadership team, in collaboration with our school district team, will be reviewing these recommendations outlined in the summary in the next year, and the process will involve thoughtful discussions, planning, and alignment with district priorities and our strategic plan. We'll continue to explore practical strategies for implementation that both support operational efficiencies and, most importantly, student success. There are several recommendations. My short amount of time here wouldn't do them all justice, and we're committed to following up on this even more in the new school year.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Trustee Caden?
Yes, thank you, and I read the report. I just have a question, and I know you probably can't answer it right now, but on the conclusion, one of the things that says, however, continue to growing program and manage the challenges and changes that will narrowly come. It sounds like NIDES is growing exponentially, and it's becoming almost capacity when I read this report. I could have probably misinterpreted it, but at some point, can it continue to sustain the growth that it has, because it's the number one online school in the province. It's very well, people they gravitate it. Part of the reviews and recommendations I was looking at what point do you think it will reach capacity? Are we looking at maybe limiting some of the programs and the resources so that we aren't overexpanding ourselves? We want to maintain that excellence that it has. So when I look at this recommendations and the conclusion, it was looking to me that NIDES is almost at capacity when I read it. I could be misinterpreting it that one there, but there needs to be really looking at, do we need to grow, or we need to manage what we have? Like, what are you seeing part of this recommendation, this growth? I'm just wondering if that's something you can allude to, or is that something that we may?
Really briefly, because you're right, it requires a real fulsome answer with our NIDES kind of administrative team. That is part of the intention to this program scan. Where are we at? Where are we going moving forward? And as you recall, we signed an agreement with the province to be a provincial online learning provider. And how does that impact our growth moving forward? So we projected growth. We've had a considerable amount. And moving forward, and just recently, we've been even talking about pieces around staffing, space requirements, and alternative options delivery, while always ensuring that we're offering quality programming. So that is a core component of what our staff will be kind of analyzing in the months and year ahead. I think it's ever changing, that environment. And we can't predict where we'll be in 6 months, a year. It's kind of that continuous environment. But the positive is we do have programs that people from all around the province at all ages are really interested and passionate to join sign up for.
No. Is there any other trustees that have a question or comment?
I'm happy to make the motion.
Okay.
That the Board of Education of School District 71, Comox Valley, receive and attach May 5th, 2025, Navigate NIDES Review Report Executive Summary and Briefing Note dated June 24th, 2025, as presented.
Written by Trustee McConnell-Keane. Those in favor?
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Carried. Thank you. Next, moving on to the 2025-26 school fees briefing note.
It's pages 29 to 36 include an updated chart of student fees. We bring this forward every year to ensure that there is transparency around what the school fees are and to ensure that we've addressed that our financial hardship policy aligns with the board's commitment. I do want to point out that this is a briefing note prepared specifically to the board, and that last year on June 24th, the financial hardship policy was adjusted to reflect conversations that took place to ensure that it was any adult at the school, not just the principal. So I do want to point out that this is basically updated by changing times and dates, but that the communications to families will be reflective of the more fulsome updated AP 305, which includes language that specifically says trusted adult at the school.
Thank you.
Trustee Caton?
So thank you. I just have a question with respect to notification and ensuring that those students who may want to become part of an athletic team, like a volleyball, basketball, or something at the high school level, when I look at here, the fees, I'm looking at the Highlands, this is athletics general fee 35, but in reality, if you join some of the senior teams, the fees for travel, for tournaments can be quite higher than that. And I'm just wondering, what processes do the high schools have to ensure that the students that are going to be signing up for those senior sports team are aware of the possible cost effect that's going to have, and like that before you sign up, this is what it's going to cost, and not the surprise when you sign up, and what support the district has for supporting those students, ensuring that they're able to play the sports if they financially a burden. And I know some of those schools can be between $1,500 to $2,000 depending on how many tournaments they go to, and because it covers a multitude of stuff.
It's a great question, Jenna. So I want to be careful to make sure my answer actually correlates to lived experience in the field. In an ideal world, every athletic team would actually know in advance all of their costs. Sometimes costs change due to successful teams qualifying for different tournaments and additional costs being borne as a result of that. I think what we can clarify is that any student, regardless of the costs involved in participation of that team, will not be held back as a result of those fees. And so it's incumbent on us to ensure that every individual knows that if there is a financial hardship associated with an activity, that our policy clearly articulates that they have every right for access. And so we need to make sure that that communication is received and that it can be accessed in as barrier stigma-free way as possible. I know that it is likely, even with that policy, that there are families who really struggle to pay for those extracurricular activities and are reticent to access that piece, and we'll continue to do work to ensure that we're making it as accessible and stigma-free as possible.
McConnell.
I was just curious. I know that there is a fee associated with sort of the Fine Arts Academy, which we received a letter for annually. Is that must not be the case for the new Learning Through Play program in the coming school year? That's just a curiosity, and I apologize if nobody has the answer right directly ready. I just wasn't curious. I thought maybe there was, but I could be wrong.
I'm not aware of an additional fee, but we would need to double check that.
Sure, no problems. Thank you.
Trustee Allinger.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious why the decision was made to fund the secondary student fees, and whether there will be additional funds left over in the Family Affordability Fund to cover families with elementary school students who may come forward requesting the assistance.
I'm sorry, I'm not clear. Are you asking, are we covering secondary fees?
Perhaps I'm reading this wrong. It says the analysis for the coming school year, the secondary school fee will be paid by the school district using the Student and Family Affordability Fund. Maybe I'm reading that wrong.
Nope. You're not reading that wrong. Well, it's a good question. Yeah, can I get back to you on that? I'm worried that may be language that is left from last year. So that may be an error that's been included unintentionally.
So on that note, would you still approve the attached fee schedules?
I think with that deleted, with
Okay, so we're deleting just
the analysis.
the analysis.
Apologies. Thank you. It's a good catch.
So then will these need to be amended?
Those fees are, the fees from the schools don't show those fees covered any other way. So it doesn't change anything else in the
Okay.
package.
Trustee Caton, did you
I
have
was going to move the recommendation if that was okay, because I don't think the recommendation impacts what we just talked
Okay,
about.
I was just clarifying, so, but thank you. Okay. So I'm,
Or do we have to?
so you could move, you could move the motion and then we could ask, you could ask your, I suspect your clarifying question.
The recommendation, the Board of Education, School District Number 71, Comox Valley, approve the attached fee schedules for the 2025-2026 school year.
A seconder, thank you, Trustee McConnell-Keen and Trustee Aldinger.
No, that's like, no, I'm fine.
So as far as what I'm hearing is that fee schedules will not change. So the board isn't passing the, or receiving the briefing note, the board is approving the fee schedules.
Okay, what I'm reading too.
Okay, all right. It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no hands raised for discussion, all those in favor? Carries, thank you. Moving on to business services and the fourth quarter financial update briefing note by our Assistant Secretary Treasurer, Jennifer Nelson.
Is it okay if I present from here, or do I need to?
Is there sound?
There is a speaker here, and I've got a lot of papers, so I just, I would appreciate it.
You're set where you are. Go ahead, please.
All right. Yeah, so this briefing is just providing you with the quarter four financial update for the 2024-25 school year. It's a snapshot of the revenues and expenses to May 31 with a forecast to the end of June. At this point, we are forecasting about a $4.5 million surplus for the year. This does include the February recalculated grant, so any of the additional enrollment that came in for our online, as well as May 1701 numbers. And any of the variances we've provided in the appendix, any significant variances, we've provided an explanation there for you. And just noting that this is a forecast, we'll just be embarking on year end, and so this number will likely change as we finalize the year end and go through our audit. And I think just wanting to draw your attention to that, you know, the 4.5 seems like a significant number, but if we look at the year, we receive quite a bit of revenue in the latter half of the year related to students that are actually going to receive instruction next year. So we do have to make sure that we carry forward a good portion of that revenue to support those requirements, as well as decisions had to be made in advance to add to the number of EAs, temporary EA positions, to ensure they're in place for September. So we have to make sure part of the surplus is also held for that. There's also some statutory items. We have targeted funding for Indigenous education, as well as we receive grants for integrated child and youth funding, which is money that also falls into this surplus that we have to carry forward, as well as other ongoing projects that have open POs. So just wanting to mention that when we're presenting this surplus tonight. With that, maybe I'll just leave it open for questions.
I know I have one, and it either fits in with this briefing note and information or the next item, which is the accumulated operating surplus. When we know that we have funds that were generated through NIDES that we need to carry forward for a commitment for our students in the next school year, why can't we subtract that money from our surplus now to have a truer surplus balance? Is it accounting, or is it like, it just feels like people it feels like there is this large pot of money, but in reality, there isn't. And even though you share that with us, it's still 4.5-ish less that amount of money. So it's confusing.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
That may be not my best word, but I'm going to say confusing. Yeah.
Totally, and I understand what you're trying to get at, and it's a great question. And unfortunately, we have to record it as revenue because our template has to match what the ministry is reporting as revenue. So we don't have a choice of deferring and making it look as though we have less revenue. And so at the end of the year, when we have the surplus, it will align with this when we have to report our financial statements. So hopefully that answers your question. Accounting wise, if we were out in a normal company, we would defer that revenue. We wouldn't even record it on our financial statements because it's related to another year. But we do have to comply with the ministry reporting requirements. So unfortunately, it does land as a surplus item.
Is there a way to consider when we're being provided with this information to be provided with that dollar figure included so that there's a more transparent understanding of it, recognizing you're having to follow the financial process for the reasons that you've stated.
We could look at in future maybe changing how we provide the summary to you. We could show it like this and maybe something at the bottom identifying anticipated carry forward. Because we are still working through that year end, finalizing the staffing process of what the numbers are. So we can't 100% say exactly what the number is at this point, but we could identify an anticipated carry forward over to have a bit more of a transparency of where we anticipate.
Yeah, thanks. I am curious whether the operating surplus this year is like significantly higher or lower or kind of fairly standard for our school district. I have to apologize, I'm not recalling from previous years. Because on the one hand, it in some ways seems like a good news story in terms of next year's budget. But on the other hand, if this is a fairly usual and predictable figure, then in some ways it feels unfortunate that some of our kids haven't benefited from services that maybe we could have afforded, but haven't because we were expecting higher numbers. And I certainly appreciate it's a mix of an art and a science, and it's very hard to predict it all. But yeah, that's kind of the underlying thought of the question, is whether this is fairly usual or if it's significantly higher or lower.
Based on my experience here, I've only been here through one year end, but looking back to the last couple of year ends, there's been a surplus, a bit less than this, but it seems to be resulting from that additional online learning enrollment that's coming in later in the year that wasn't anticipated. So kind of in alignment with what our Associate Superintendent Dixon was speaking about, the increased enrollment in our NIDES and online learning environment is contributing to that as well. So
Really unpredictable.
fairly unpredictable, but we've been landing the last couple of years with a surplus in line with this.
Kaden?
So thank you. So thank you for the report. And I did say, and I've done a few budgets, I was a bit confused when I saw that $4 million, because I don't recall in past budgets that being as high, but I also understand from your explanation as to why. But what I'm worried about is people won't look at the rationale. They'll just look at School District 71 at the end of the school year has a $4 million surplus, and then they'll look at, well, why didn't we do this and why did we do that during the year and why we have this surplus? So I would like to, I understand why it is, but I think that to me it's concerning that the assumption will be that we're not spending the money that we have we had this year for the students in this year, and not realizing a lot of this is targeted for next year. So when I saw that, and I've been doing this for years, it did confuse me and it did concern me on how we can ensure the community and our education community that the money that we have is being spent. And this is specific to certain things from what I hear, the North Island and some of the things you talked about. But I do hate having a $4 million surplus. It doesn't look good. I'm sorry, it just, in today's needs, it's to me, I was worried, but thank you for your explanation, but it did explain it. But I think somehow the reporting, I'm not sure how you can make it, I called it user-friendly, or make it more clarity that, while yes, it's $4 million, it's not really $4.5 million. Some of that is targeted funding for next year. We got the money and maybe separate it away a bit better in clearing. Does that make sense to you? Okay, and then when I looked at some of these restricted, like we've got on here, we've identified some items on here that if you look at them and you add to them, our surplus can go pretty fast. So in reality is we do have the surplus, but we've already kind of designated possibly spending for next year in some areas we don't have a lot of money to play with. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. And another factor to consider is the board's opportunity to add to their contingency reserve, that they are, you're currently sitting around 2.6%, and there's an opportunity to potentially increase that reserve as well.
I just was going to add a comment that perhaps Jennifer or Jay could help with, but I think we're taking a slightly different approach to NIDE staffing and reviewing in more depth the need for staff. And therefore, next year, you might not see that type of a surplus coming through NIDES. Would that be?
I would say,
I mean, it's hard to predict.
yeah, there's definitely been work to properly right size the staffing to ensure ratios are in alignment, and I would let Mr. Dixon speak to that, but also really working at doing the best we can to try and predict enrollment a bit better too. I think there's always been a very conservative approach to budgeting for the enrollment, and we're trying to do get a bit more accuracy around that, although it is difficult, so that we can ensure we're planning for appropriate revenues, and then we can appropriately staff as well. So maybe that helps.
Move the recommendation.
Yeah.
That the Board of Education for School District Number 71, Comox Valley, received the Q4 financial update briefing note dated June 24th, 2025, as presented.
Thank you. And seconder, Mr. Howe. And seeing no further hands raised, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All hands raised.
Yep.
And next is the anticipated accumulated reserve for 2024-2025.
Yeah, so this just really similar to what we just spoke about. This is as we're working through year end, the board will have an opportunity to raise funds for one-time use in the next year. I touched a bit on the NIDES and the additional EAs, but we've also provided a list of other items that have come up through our budget process. So keeping in mind feedback we've received, as well as review with the leadership team, we've provided a listing here for consideration. And as we work through year end, we'll be coming back later in the summer with the refined list and the actual and surplus and amounts for recommendation for you to consider. I didn't have anything else to add. So yeah, I won't go through the list in detail. They are identified there for you. And then also factoring in keeping your contingency reserve within the appropriate level, and an opportunity to potentially increase that at that time as well.
I was just going to say, I was really grateful in reading this for a little more sort of explanation as to like the local capital not funded, like just those tiny pieces. I know it seems as if we should be able to pull that out of our own knowledge, but at times when you're looking at one sheet and reading something, like it really helped me to retain what I'd read before and be seeing it in this moment and not needing to sort of go back and forth and make sure I understood properly. So thank you for the explanations in addition. Was helpful.
For hands from.
Can I just add one? I just want to make sure that we're clear on this conversation that there are some pieces that are listed here, but some of them are obligations. So for example, and I know we've covered that, but just wanted to be really clear that there's close to $1.5 million of funds set aside for NIDE staffing as a result of their increased enrollment. So just recognizing that those are obligations to that program and not necessarily part of a conversation around it's not a discretionary item to determine based on other priorities, the necessity to support that program. So, so just wanting to make sure that we're aware that even though they're in that list, there are some things that are part of, it looks like revenue, but it would be no different than if Brooklyn went up 100 students, it would require 4 teachers to meet that need. So I just want to make sure we're really clear on that.
And just sharing that we will be approving the finalized list at our first public board meeting of next year.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing, but I'm happy to move this motion that the Board of Education for School District 71, Comox Valley, receive the anticipated accumulated reserve for 2024-2025 briefing note dated June 24th, 2025 as presented.
Seconded by Trustee Ellinger. Is there any further questions or comments? Being none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And thank you, and that's carried. And next is sheets of white paper here is our 2025-26 preliminary operating budget and bylaw.
So tonight we've brought back the 2025-2026 ministry template and bylaw for consideration. So we've been presenting the budget all the way through the spring. We were back on June 10th at the Committee of the Whole where we did a presentation on the full budget and offered opportunities for questions and feedback. All of the presentations and reports are on our dedicated budget webpage. So really tonight, just looking for those 3 readings and adoption. There's been no changes to this document since you saw it at the last Committee of the Whole. Happy to take any questions.
Is there any questions on the briefing note? Okay, seeing.
So move the,
You're going to start us?
start us. I didn't see any hands up there.
Motion 1.
Motion 1. It has to be unanimous unless we want to come back here in 2 nights. That the Board of Education of School District Number 71 Comox Valley give all 3 readings of the School District Number 71 Comox Valley Annual Budget Bylaw for fiscal year 2025-26 in one meeting.
Seconded, sorry, Vice Chair Howe. See no hands raised in discussion. All those in favor? That was all hands raised, and that's been carried unanimously. And motion 2, who would like to start us? Trustee Leslie?
Motion 2, that the Board of Education of School District Number 71, Comox Valley, adopt the annual budget bylaw for fiscal year 2025-2026, cited as School District Number 71, Comox Valley Annual Budget Bylaw for the fiscal year 2025-2026, being a bylaw associated with the annual budget, showing the estimated revenue and expense for the 2025-2026 fiscal year, and the total budget bylaw amount of $164,928,867. Did I say that? Yes, for the 2025 fiscal year.
Read for first time.
Read for the first time this 24th day of June 2025.
And that's been seconded by Vice Chair Howe. I see no hands raised. All those in favor? And there were no opposed, and that's carried. And then who would like to read it for the second time? Trustee Caton?
That the Board of Education of School District 71, Comox Valley adopt the annual budget bylaw for the fiscal year 2025-2026 cited as School District Number 71, Comox Valley, annual budget bylaw for fiscal year 2025-2026, being a bylaw associated with the annual budget showing the estimated revenue and expense for the 2025-2026 fiscal year and the total budget bylaw amount of $164,928,867 for the 2025-2026 fiscal year, read a second time this 24th day of June 2025.
Seconder, Trustee McConnell-Keen. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And there are none opposed, and that's carried. And who would like to read for the third time?
I can go ahead and read. That the Board of Education of School District 71, Comox Valley adopt the annual budget bylaw for fiscal year 2025-2026, cited as School District Number 71, Comox Valley, annual budget bylaw for fiscal year 2025-26, being a bylaw associated with the annual budget showing the estimated revenue and expense for the 2025-2026 fiscal year and the total budget bylaw amount of $164,928,867 for the 2025-2026 fiscal year. Read a third time, passed and adopted the 24th day of June 2025.
Great. And seconder, Trustee McConnell-Keen. And seeing no hands raised in discussion, all those in favor? And that's carried and with unanimously. Moving on in our agenda, we have the 2026-2027 capital plan summary briefing note by our Director of Operations, Molly Proudfoot.
What you see here is the 2026-27 major capital submission that's due at the end of June of every year. So before proceeding with the recommendation, I wanted to field any questions that you may have regarding the submission.
Trustee Caton?
So thank you. I guess the question I have is the process and the progress on the food infrastructure program plan. With many of our schools having the lunch program, I'm wondering how that, if this is going to be enough to ensure that those schools that need those kitchen helps and that food preparation, is that going to support the program? I just wasn't quite clear when I saw that, how that was going to work for that process and program that we're doing.
Yes, so that's will be covered in minor capital, which is due in September of every year.
Okay.
And that's like the food infrastructure program that you're referring to. We intend on submitting again for this upcoming submission. We were successful in the past two, so hopefully that will continue.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I have a question, and it's regarding the new schools additions and site acquisitions section. Just curious, the last year, this report had Mark Isfeld secondary first and George P. Vanier second. Just wondering if you can explain why that's changed.
Yeah, so good question and observation. So Vanier, we have seen an increase in enrollment, and when we project out, it feels like it's going to be the heavier growth school of the two. So in speaking with the ministry, they recommended that we made that our priority project for this upcoming submission. However, the need for Isfeld is more related to ancillary space, a little bit less of instructional space. So
I didn't have that from memory. I did have to go back.
no.
Trustee McConnell-Keen and then Trustee Ollinger.
I was just curious with this language might be either prior or that we just need to be consistent with what we've said, but because the Union Bay Estates are no longer going to be the Union Bay Estates, and I think one property at least has been sold sort of the waterfront, and then the other two, I don't know. Just where does that stand, and how does that affect the school district property that is adjacent? If you don't mind speaking to it briefly.
Yeah, it's been an ever-evolving situation, as all the residents of the area know. So this is a 5-year capital plan submission. So the intention with the Union Bay is that we would put it at the end of the 5-year. And the notion is that we don't really know what's going to happen. So it kind of covers our bases because it shows that there is the potential need for it. And so that's why it's included. Yeah, and then the adjacent property is still one that we have through the RDP, which is the Rural Development Program for demolition.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. I have a question about the replacement school. I see École Plantledge Park is the only one on the list, which is hopefully good news in the district. I'm wondering if the district has any sense of the timing of a likely rebuild at this point or replacement. And then also, as a first-term trustee, I'm curious what role like district administration and even the school itself has in relation to any planning once a rebuild is announced, as opposed to, simply the province making all the decisions. Like, what role do we as a district have in making some of the decisions about the nature of the school that's built?
So École Plantledge is probably one of our older schools with the lowest facility condition rating. So that's why it is up for replacement. Unfortunately, right now, the ministry is so focused on space, like the need for more space, that the replacement program is more derived out of needing to increase the size of your school. So your school is too small and also needs replacing. So they kind of combine those two needs, and that makes like your strength of your submission. In the case of École Plantledge, our enrollment isn't high enough to really meet that threshold. But come the time, hopefully when that happens, there would be the TDR process, which is like a review of the plan, the future plan, and the district kind of presenting what that would look like, high level. And the school would be a part of that conversation. And then once we get formal approval, you would bring in the school for action and develop a stakeholder group, and you would kind of start that process. So the school would be able to have input.
That's a great question, thank you. Yeah. Are there any other questions or queries regarding the capital plan summary? If not, would you like to move the motion forward?
Motion that the Board of Education of School District Number 71 Comox Valley, in accordance with provisions under Section 1424 of the School Act, approve the proposed 5-year capital plan major capital programs for the 2026-2027 as provided on the 5-year capital plan summary for the 2026-2027 submitted to the Ministry of Infrastructure.
McConnell-Keen. Any?
We're seeing Ministry of Infrastructure instead of Ministry of Education.
Seeing no hands raised, call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried by all the trustees that are here tonight. Next, we're gonna move on to closed caption television CCTV annual report by our Director of Information Technology, Josh Porter.
Thank you very much. So on page 64 of the board package, the briefing note for the annual CCTV video surveillance report is included. Just a few highlights before any questions come up. We have a number of antiquated systems in a number of schools that we're working through refreshing right now. They're systems that have been around for better part of multiple decades. And technology has come a long way to allow us to simplify and put less cameras in to get better quality images. At the same time, we're just working through ensuring that we have the proper signage posted in locations as required through the School Act. And really, ultimately, it's part of a broader suite of tools that we have available as using CCTV cameras in protecting the safety of individuals, protecting the property in the district, and really belongings within those sites as well, whether it's during the day, after hours. We combine that with various lighting schedules and staff on site monitoring as well. So recommendations before you, but happy to answer any questions.
To see hands, Trustee Eldinger.
Thank you very much for this briefing note. I do have a couple of questions, and I kind of hesitated to see if anyone else put their hand up first. My first question concerns, I see that you've detailed the purpose of having these cameras, and like what, essentially it's largely a matter of safety concerns, and you've included the conclusion that it's felt that the installation and operation of them is accomplishing their purpose. And I'm wondering, like, specifically what type of data we are collecting that is useful, or information that we're collecting that is useful, and also how long it gets retained. And a couple of follow-ups too.
Absolutely. So we use the video safety guidelines in place. So our AP retention is 30 days, so 1 month essentially. As far as the data collected, it's not monitored. It's only utilized when we have to go and investigate. Essentially, if there's an incident, then we look to see if the cameras did catch something. Of course, they don't catch 100% of everything. We can't see every space of the schools. And there's in fact only, I believe, 3 schools that have indoor cameras. The rest of them do not. So it is, it's not something where we're going looking at those systems all the time. We do look at them to determine if we have failed cameras or if we have to improve locations, but they're not used as sort of a monitoring tool per se, just an investigation. And of course, we do engage working with RCMP when said incidents come up.
And then my follow-up is just having sat in on PAC meetings for 10 years and now 3 years as a trustee, or my third school year as a trustee. I think this is the first time this has come, like, that I've seen in a PAC meeting or at the school board level. So I'm wondering what, and this may not be a question for you, it may be a question for Jeremy, but what information is being conveyed to principals to ensure that this information is being conveyed to PACs and that their input is being sought out as is required under the School Act, and then also whose list of responsibilities this falls under to ensure that this is coming before the board every year. And I mean, I see it's in our board working plan, so it's partly our responsibility to make sure it's there, but I'm curious who's else.
Yeah, well, I think the responsibility for it to come annually is the responsibility of the superintendent. So this should be something you expect every year. I think one of the pieces that even this briefing note illuminates is actually our AP is actually out of step with the School Act. It actually doesn't specify in AP 181 the importance and requirement of ensuring that there is that there's been consultation and collaboration with PAC. It's in the briefing note, but it's not necessarily embedded deeply in AP 181. So that's another one of our administrative procedures that needs to reflect School Act language and ensure that that proper consultations taken place with PAC. I in other spaces as superintendent would sign a form that showed that consultation process that had a PAC signature and a principal signature that approved the placement of a CCTV camera. So we have some work to do.
You did ask one of my questions, and I was trying to read the School Act and say, well, when did the process get implemented? Was it 1996? I was trying to figure out when that point in time was that there was a change, but it was beyond me, and so I'm pleased that our AP is going to ensure that it aligns with proper process. Thank you. And just Vice Chair Howe.
That the Board of Education of School District Number 71 Comox Valley received the 2025 CCTV Video Surveillance Annual Report dated June 24th, 2025 as presented.
And looking for a seconder, Trustee McConnell-King, and all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to the 2024 PSO Climate Change Accountability Report briefing note by our Director of Operations, Molly Proudfoot.
Okay, so if you guys remember from last year, this is the car report. Rock on. So the reporting cycle is January to December. I want to just thank Trudy Murdoch, who's the Operations Senior Administrative Assistant, for all of her time and joules
Yay, Tree.
on this project. That's been really fun. Many kilowatt hours spent on it. So this is an annual regulatory requirement due at the end of May of each year. So it's broken up into three main categories of GHG emissions. You can see your stationary sources, which are your buildings, which are your largest emitters and contributors to greenhouse gases. Your mobile sources, so that's your fleet vehicles, and then your paper consumption. So a bit of a spoiler alert, the district's achieved a 35% reduction in our GHG emissions, and that's based off of the school district's 2010 baseline year. So the good news there is we're on track to meet our target for 2030, which is a reduction of 40%. A big reason for this was the installation of heat pumps in our portables, so that reduced our reliance on propane. So we saw a 23% reduction in our propane consumption, which is great. You can see on page 8 of the report, or sorry, page 3 and 4 of the report, you can see a quick summary of just some of the projects that we accomplished in the 2024 year. As well as you can see on page 8, a summary of the planned energy efficiency projects we have for the 2025 year. So I think really this just comes down to commitment from operations and the district to continue down this path of climate action and adaptation. So I feel like we're on the right track, but I'm curious if you have any questions.
Mr. Howe?
I just wondered, I remember, was it a year or two ago when we kind of got like that? It was almost like a presentation of like a work plan that was bringing us to sort of almost where we're at now. And it'll just be, I guess this isn't really a question. I just look forward to seeing, like, you know, we're at this phase and like seeing the next sort of like what's next kind of on the docket, because it seems like from what I can recall, like a lot of this stuff was what we had been presented, was it 2 years ago about, right? And yeah, it's just great to see everything kind of plugging along here, and that like it's happening. Like it showed like it was going to take a few, you know, years. It was a long sort of term plan, and we had sort of, you'd given us like the snapshot. So thanks so much. This is good to see. I like getting the update, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. Trustee Aldinger?
Now, this is, well, part question, but also part just like great work. I remember the presentation 2 years ago and did backtrack and look at my notes. And at the time, I think we were paying $78,500 for carbon offsets, and that if we didn't continue to reduce emissions, that by 2030, we would be looking at $333,000. So like what a huge savings that has been. Yeah, so just kudos, that's really great. I'm thrilled to be in a district that looks like it will be making the reductions that we need by 2030. And I'm also curious, interested to read that the heat pumps were making a real difference. Are there any portables left in the district that don't have them? Like, is that another, or is there any further work that can be done in that narrow area?
Yeah, I think definitely we have to look at our reliance on those, like the fuel switching style projects. So the portables were kind of an easy one to knock off. And now we have some more complex systems that we need to tackle. But
All of the portables now have heat pumps? Oh, that's great. Okay, good.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised.
I could move the motion. That the Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley receive the 2024 PSO Climate Change Accountability Report, CAR, dated June 24th, 2025, as presented.
Seconded by Trustee Ollinger. And see no hands raised. All those in favor? And that's carried. I will say that one of the perks of being retired is no longer being responsible in my organization that I work for having to actually do all the data input and create the report. So, just saying, it brought back some memories. It brought back some memories. It really did. And next, sorry, I really digress there. My apologies. We have the Safe and Active Schools program, a briefing note, and we have our Director of Operations, Molly Proudfoot, going to share some new and exciting information. Newer and very good.
yes, so the City of Courtenay is seeking the district's support in proceeding with the development and implementation of the Safe and Active School program for 3 of the identified schools. So you'll see a Colton Ledge Park Elementary School, Courtenay Elementary School, and Valley View Elementary School identified. The criteria for the selection and proposed timeline is also included in the briefing note. So I think that this is really positive work. See community members, but also on the school level. And I'm happy to field any questions you have about it.
Yeah, my question would just be anything that can be shared around where I know CVRD is involved in the proposed resource team, but where they're at with sort of their other municipalities, if to be considered in time. And my other question is just sort of somewhat related. I mean, for a school district, perhaps to be part of the resource team would also make me wonder, like, whether there would be great consideration for those school sites that have large early learning childcare centers now on them, understanding just that increased risk and sort of to safety and sort of field trips and transportation around there. So I guess my mind would just be, if there's anything you know or that you could offer, that I'd be curious how that comes into the conversation. I understand community nonprofit organizations are in there, but that's a large basket, obviously, and I think that probably the school district is a closer to speak to the centers that they're liable for, as a landlord to, as opposed to the nonprofit operators in them. So I'm just curious if you know anything around that, or whether how that works.
So I think that, this is hopefully the first phase of more to come.
Okay.
So they've identified 3 to target this time around, but the intention is that the program will grow. So I think that type of criteria, like you can see in the briefing note, they sort of have how they came to the decision of these 3 schools. We could also provide input about the childcare that they can factor into future reviews.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay.
So thank you. When I looked at the 3 schools, and I'm looking at the Valley View Elementary School and the Safe Schools, and I'm looking at that intersection right there, and I have to tell you, that's one of the busiest and dangerous intersections I have seen in a long time. But yet But Valley View has been identified as one of the schools, and what they talk about here is recently implemented road safety improvements. And I'm wondering, and forgive me for being confused, is where were the road improvements in this area here to ensure those students getting to Valley View are safe, because I haven't seen anything along this road. And especially since it's been a detour for the road construction, I find it's one of the most dangerous intersections we've had for students crossing. And I have been at the intersection, I've seen students cross and cars not letting them, like literally going. So I'm wondering, is Courtney monitoring this, or is this going to be ongoing monitoring to make sure that this road here is meeting those needs? Because I just don't find any improvements to support their statement here.
For Valley?
Yeah, for this, yeah.
Yeah, I think that the city of Courtney and the CBRD are closely linked, especially when it comes to fielding. There's also the Ministry of Transportation. That's a big player. So typically, if there's concerns that are raised on the school level, one of the things that we can do is send messaging out to those groups to say, like, this is an area that we feel like has is high risk for these reasons, and kind of start the advocacy there, because they want to hear from us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks for the question. I think that I believe this has also been raised even in reference to Marketsfeld for the students as well, is that when the speed limits were lowered in many areas, this thoroughfare wasn't lowered, and there were questions about the high school students as well. So so those would be two schools that their curiosity is for. I did have a question about any monetary contribution and connected to this project. I didn't see it in here. I was just curious if there's been clarification, if other than the time for the resource team being somebody or multiple staff or other people from the district, has there been a formal discussion about the money piece?
Right now, it's more of a review of the municipal infrastructure around the school sites. However, based off of previous experience, when it comes to these things, there's usually like a desire to integrate onto the school district property, depending on where you create that connector. So sometimes there is a conversation with the school district around what could we do about creating a pathway on school district property. So we would look at exploring those when those types of feedback kind of came up.
See if there's any other questions or comments. Okay, seeing none. Was there a trustee that would like to move this?
Sure. Would the Board of Education for School District Number 71, Comox Valley, support the initial schools identified by the City of Courtney in their briefing note dated May 28, 2025, being Ecole Pentledge Park Elementary School, Courtney Elementary School, Valley View Elementary School for the Safe and Active School Program, and for staff to work with the City of Courtney in the development and implementation of the SAS program.
Okay, and seconded by Trustee McConnell-Keen. All those in favor? And that's carried. And
Thanks,
I would
Molly.
like to thank the City of Courtney for their work on this and starting with these three schools to undertake this. Safe and Active Schools is, we've heard it often in different parts of our district at different times. And I appreciate the work that's gone in advance of us receiving this today. I wanted to share that. And I'm moving on to our open committee of the whole board report. Go ahead.
The Board of Education of School District Number 71, Comox Valley receives the report to the board dated June 10th, 2025, as presented.
Thank you, Trustee McConnell-Keen, seconded by Vice Chair Howell. And all those in favor? And that's been carried. Thank you very much. Our next open committee of the whole meeting has not been scheduled yet. So we look forward to being able to share that date once we have it established. Next, we have the Ad Hoc Policy Committee Board Reports. Trustee McConnell-Keen.
Certainly, yeah, the report is in page 98, 99, and, or sorry, 97, 98, 99, and I think that the committee is just certainly looking forward to, as you can read in here, the work ahead, both with, as Dr. Morrow was speaking to tonight, some of the work that is certainly needing to happen with our administrative procedures and along with our policies significantly as well. I'm really grateful to hear about some of the planning phases specifically and how we can really move this work along in what remains of certainly the sports term. And I'm feeling really grateful. I think it's going to be a really great support for the district and the work that's already happening. And then just to speak to that, so the reason you wouldn't see a date for our committee meeting to be determined is largely because we'll be following sort of a new process perhaps and finding, as you can see in our action items, how we can support the work right now to ensure that we aren't going ahead and bumping into each other along the way, essentially, as we go forward. So looking forward to that, and I'm happy to move the motion if there's no questions. That, the Board of Education of School District number 71 receives the report to the board dated June 12th, 2025 as presented.
And that's been seconded by Vice Chair Howe. All those in favor? And that's been carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to board business. We have the Indigenous Education Council trustee report by Trustee Leslie.
I attached a briefing note. The Indigenous Education Council is really enjoying meeting at different sites, as opposed to sitting in a room, but getting out into schools and connecting with students in the school community. And they met at a Cole Puntledge Park Elementary on June 10th, and I think really enjoyed working and playing and learning with the Indigenous K1 students at the school.
Thank you. I will say that that meeting that they had, we did play. We were in the trees at Cole Puntledge, watching the students make some beautiful work out of nature. It was wonderful. And then their next meeting is yet to be determined. Is that my understanding?
Yes, it's in August, but the date hasn't been. There's a survey out right now.
Okay. All right, moving on, I believe, to page 5 of our agenda. We have the 2025-26 board meeting dates briefing note, and we have our secretary treasurer going to share and perhaps update the dates for us.
Yes, so in the briefing note under Appendix A, which is on page 102, is just our list of board meeting dates for 25-26 with an amendment, and I believe, Candace, do you have copies that we can have available over here? That will just indicate that we will have an in-camera meeting and a regular board meeting in August. I believe it's August 26th off the top of my head. And so we have those available for anyone that would like to take a look. And I am looking to the board to approve that as amended.
Are there any questions? Go ahead, Trustee Ellinger.
I think I heard you say that there's both an in-camera and regular board in August, but the list just says in-camera, so I just wanted to clarify that it's both.
Oh, yes, it is. It's both.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to move the amended motion.
Okay.
That the Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley approve the schedule of regular board meetings for the 2025-2026 school year as amended.
Seconded by trustee Aldinger. Any discussion? So just to clarify, it is a in-camera and a regular meeting on August 26th. Okay, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. And for the trustees whose calendars aren't syncing, I wish you the best of luck. Your calendar syncs. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
The bridge is for calendar.
All right. Next, we have a briefing note by trustee Caton on student voice in board governance.
Okay. So you'll see before you a briefing note, which I'm not going to read. I believe everyone's probably had the opportunity to read it. And then there's the motion. So before I make the motion, is there any questions or clarification before I?
Yeah, maybe it's just because I wasn't around last month or last meeting. I just want, like, could you just speak a little bit more about exactly what your vision is, like what you're imagining, like.
Okay, so that.
There's not a lot of detail in the briefing note, and so I'm just not sure exactly what you're.
Okay, so the briefing note and the motion was kept simple because I do not want to predetermine what role students would like to have a say. They want to have a say, but I don't know what it is. Okay. So we talk about students being the center of everything that we do. As BCSTA, we talk about students being the first, foremost part of what we do. But when it comes to make decisions at the board table and committees, we make many decisions that have impact on students, but they're the one voice that are not at the table. We hear from parents, we hear from our other educational stakeholders, we've not heard from students. And over the course of the year of attending the student council voices, they want their voices heard when appropriate in some decisions that we're making. So I've left it very simple because I do not want to predetermine what their input is. Do they want to be formally at a committee? Do they want to, what they want to do? And that's why I don't want to speak to the motion, but that is why it was kind of left generically in some sense, because we don't know exactly where they will fit with us, but they want to be part of the conversation. So that's why it's kind of simple to say that we want to include them in the conversation, but at the end of the day, it's that conversation, how do they want to see fit? And I'm kind of speaking to the motion, kind of out of sync, but let's try to answer your question.
So would we like to make the, trustee Leslie, would you like the motion on the floor before you ask your question, or would you like to ask your question first?
No, I'm good. We'll put the motion on the floor and then I'll.
So I'm going to move the motion that the Board of Education of School District, so I can't even talk, sorry. That the Board of Education of School District 71 Comox Valley direct the superintendent to work with the district student council and the board to develop a process for meaningful involvement of student voice in the work of the board.
Seconder?
Sorry, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, trustee McCallum. So I'll have trustee Caton go first, and then I'll have trustee Leslie, if she wishes, to speak to the motion next, because you allowed for the motion to be tabled first.
Yeah. So speaking to the motion, as stated in the briefing note, we talk about students are the center of everything that we do. We have yet, when we make decisions that impact students, how do we know the decisions we're making at the board table are relevant and work with the students? And what I'm saying is student voice, over my year of sitting there and listening to them, they have a lot of really good common sense. They have a lot of ideas, they have a lot of thoughts, they have a lot of things about their career when it comes to education, when it comes to safety, when it comes to processes. So there's many things that we do as a board and motions that we do and policies that have impact on what's happening with students in the classroom. And the reason this voice is simple, the board developed a process, is how do students want to engage with the board? Do they want a formal process? Do they want to come to committee as a whole? Do they want to be part of committee presentation to the board? So I'm not sure what it is, but we talk about student voice, we talk about them being the center of our decision, but where are they in the conversation? Where do we listen to them? How do we know what we're doing at the table is relevant to what their education and their needs and what they want. And if we're going to say we put students first, then we need to hear what students have to say. So the process is to have that conversation between student voice and the board and come to determine what works best for us as a district and us as students in having that conversation in the voice. So that's why it's a generic motion, not predetermining that they will be appointed to a committee, appointed to the committee of the whole, or we'll invite it to policy meetings. I'm not sure, because that's the conversation.
Thank you. Trustee Leslie?
I'm curious, have the students raised the idea of a more formal process for them to be invited to speak to the board? In your experience, I attended the last student voice gathering in this room, and the students were candid and had incredible, not just experiences and stories that they shared, but they put forward some viable solutions to some of the conflicts, perhaps, problems they might encounter in their school day. So I hear what you're saying. I believe student voice is valid and needed. So that would be the first question. I have two more.
So in this student voice and the one previous, students have asked to be included in more decision-making. They want their voices heard. So yes, they have asked for that ability to be more involved in some of the decision-making and the processes and the conversation that happens at the district that impacts them in the classroom. So this is coming from their voice, yes.
Trustee Leslie, can I just check with the other trustees to see if they have a question? Sure. Are you happy to wait till Trustee Leslie asks all her questions? Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead.
And in terms of student voice, I'm thinking about there is a small group that meets and gathers through the student voice forum or gathering that happens once a month, I believe. My curiosity is that representative of all student voice? And I would really like to hear from a diverse group, a large group, perhaps school by school, and in terms of a structure, in order to do that, if we open this up to student voice and we're listening as a board, I'm thinking it's much bigger than just the 20 students that come and gather here. We're really listening to the students in the district, and they could also be students that are elementary students, that they could be not just 8 to 12s, right? So I'm looking at, I know this is open and the motion is open, and I'm thankful for that. But I'm thinking a lot about really opening the box and what might that look like. And that's it.
Thank you. Trustee McCallum.
Sure. Yeah, I will be in support of the motion. I do feel that, just to speak more where we're at now, I do feel that the Student Voice Council, from what we've been shared from it, which has been fulsome, like I certainly have felt connected, though we don't attend everyone, all of us, of course. So I feel like that has really fulfilled some of what this would aim for, but I will always support finding a way to lift those voices up even further. So I guess what I would say is I think that if this motion enables us to be even more creative with how we connect the conversations here to the conversations, whether they're there or in other ways. And I don't think that needs to be like, I'm I'm grateful that it's vague. I don't think that needs to be like, this better happen by September. I think that it's just how can we be even more innovative? How can we even be more creative in ensuring that when a topic is coming up next month for us or for all of us together in our committee, that how did we ensure that we had the voice that really wanted to be heard lifted? And I know that might sound also vague, but I think that it just keeps our focus in that area. So I'm in support of it. And I just want you to know that that was sort of the reason. And I appreciate that it's not specific in exactly how we think that will work. So. Trustee Alonso?
Yeah, I too am in support of the motion. I am very much in support of expanding consultation and student engagement. I'm really proud of the foundation that has been created in the last few years. And I'm definitely interested in expanding, again, that consultation and engagement piece. I think too, I see potential for expanding it beyond the student's voice, the student council that we have now, engaging our like we have a district-wide GSA group that meets a couple of times a year. I think that would be a really interesting a group to consult with it or engage at times. I think it takes some planning, like more than just having, or, one model would be having someone attend committees and board meetings, but another model would involve like consulting ahead of the decisions that we're making, and, potentially offering options to come and present even. But I think my hope too would be that we're exploring lots of different options and also some scalability in terms of like expanding what we have without necessarily leaping to the next, like a huge leap to the next step. I think there are lots of incremental steps that we can take as we figure out what's going to work best. Yeah, I certainly like the idea of consulting our students more than we do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm just, yeah.
I'm gonna wait for, yes,
Vice Chair Howe, did you speak?
Yeah, I mean, I just appreciate you guys having this conversation for me, because it just, I'm in support of the motion. I'm in support of any time we get to have more student voice, the better, in whatever capacity. I echo all of your comments. So thanks so much for I know we had a big agenda today, so thanks for taking the time to sort of like just run it out with me, because I wasn't here. I wanted to hear everyone's opinions.
do you know what I'm thinking? I know that the motion's on the floor and we second it, we're having a discussion, but I'm looking to make an amendment to the motion because it directs the superintendent to work with the district student council only.
No, on the board.
And the board.
Yes, but there are many more different student groups than just the student council or the group that gathers for student voice, right? There's a student council at a lot of high schools. There's the group that gathers here that represent our student voice. There's also, I'm hoping soon in the future at some point, some Indigenous leadership groups. I see that if, I just don't want to limit us.
Just to say students.
So we can do it, we can amend, we can do a friendly amendment to the district student council and we're going to work with the district student council and other students within the school district. So including other
And other appropriate student bodies and other.
How about student leadership groups instead of?
Well, then we need to include QSA.
Why not just students?
And I just need to share, we've got 9 minutes before 9.
Okay.
And
Almost
we will
there.
need to make a motion to extend the meeting, but we're in the middle of a motion.
Can I just say that district student council does encompass all the students we've been talking about at the moment, even it does encompass all that one. So if we start with that, it doesn't preclude us from expanding that, but the district student council does currently include all the student groups that you are currently referring to. There's student representation from all that on there. And I'll speak to the superintendent, who is the, you along with Joe, or you gathered a compass of students from all the district. I just want to clarify that. We do have students representing everybody.
So I just want to keep us in order, but Superintendent, if you want to respond to that, and then I have a hand raised over here.
We do have a wide range of students that come and represent all wide variety of diverse backgrounds and perspectives. I would say that any group, approximately 40 students, is going to not necessarily be completely comprehensive. I think what we can safely say is it's likely that the themes that are raised in that student voice group resonate across all schools and all spaces in the district, whether it be concerns about washrooms or other issues like that are I think pertain to all of our students and their lived experience in school. I think the only piece that I would be cognizant of, we do have 11,000 students that are registered, and so we don't want to be too specific, but we also want to be careful that it's a manageable motion in terms of expectation for consultation. Like with all students is a different motion. So just being aware that we do have a very significant.
Yeah.
So Trustee McConnell, can I clarify, did you have an amendment on the floor, or were you just working through it?
I'm just working through it. I wanted to talk.
I just for a perspective, like I read this very differently than like we're going to them to increase their specific voices. I see this as like to work with the already established, or which will next year be established again, the current existing district student council and the board to develop a process for meaningful involvement of all student voice. So I think that like I don't feel that this means how are we going to lift these voices that already exist more, but how do they feel, rather than us deciding ourselves right now that we can lift more voices of students. So I don't feel that it's limiting.
I have a recommendation, a motion. Are you ready? What do you think?
Sure.
Here it comes. Actually, just had some help.
I'm just finding the time.
Okay, it's going to be fast. That the Board of Education of School District Number 71, Comox Valley, direct the superintendent to work with the board to develop a process for meaningful involvement of student voice in the work of the board.
Okay, so you would need a seconder, and then we would need to discuss that amendment.
Can you read it aloud again, please?
That the Board of Education of School District 71, Comox Valley, direct the superintendent to work with the board to develop a process for meaningful involvement of student voice in the work of the board.
You would need a seconder. Hey, did you want to speak to your amendment?
I believe the amendment allows us to have further conversations as the superintendent is working with the board in developing a process for meaningful involvement. And we have a process working with student voice right now, and we're listening, but there isn't a structure in place to bring the students to us in terms of our board work. I believe we need more time and discussion to figure out how these relationships and conversations may happen in terms of our board work process.
So I'm just going to share, if I may, I actually don't think the motion makes sense at this point, the way it's been amended, that the Board of Education of School District Number 71, Comox Valley, direct the superintendent to work with the board. So we could just have passed a motion, and that was one of the iterations of the motion that had come forward, was that that the board just say that they were going to do this. And I think the inclusion of directing the superintendent to work with the district student council involved the students, or a group of students, in what could it look like. So I don't actually think the motion.
Right, so you're not in favor.
Just because the motion isn't actually in order, like, I understand what you're trying to do, but it directs the superintendent to work with the board. The board is directing the superintendent to work with the.
Yes, I got it.
Right?
Yeah.
So really,
It was,
that motion could have read,
Yes,
board
yes.
develop a process for meaningful involvement. Like
Or work
Got
with
it.
the
Got
superintendent to
it. There's a
develop.
lot of board in there.
yeah, so, and Trustee McCann.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat myself, but I think we were thinking at the exact same time, which is what happens sometimes. But I think that, I think that the council, I believe, I read it as the council and the board, along with Jeremy,
Yes.
will find a way to lift up all students' voices in a more meaningful way. So I think it captures some of the concerns that we've had myself.
I like that when you said all student voices in a meaningful way, because I think we need to include more student voices than the students that meet in here.
Where are we at with the motion?
That works with me.
So the motion's on
We
the
have to
table.
vote on
We own it. We have to
Susan.
vote to defeat it.
No, I know, right? So are we're voting on the amending the motion to strike working with the district student?
Yes. Yes, we are.
So that's the amendment that we're
Yes.
voting on. So all those in favor of the amendment to the motion, which strikes the section to work with the district student council, all those in favor?
Yeah.
Of the amendment?
We're striking it, so.
Right, that's the amendment. We're voting if we wish to strike, if we wish to amend the motion to that language.
Oh,
Yes.
no.
Yes, we are voting that the motion would read that the Board of Education of School District Number 71 direct the superintendent to work with the board to develop a process for meaningful involvement of student voice in the work of the board. That's my understanding.
Got it.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? Okay, all those opposed to the amendment? Okay, so the amendment has failed. So we're back to the original motion. Is there any further amendments to the motion? Okay, seeing none, any final thoughts from the?
I'm just going to call the question, looking at the
All
time.
right, call the question.
To your amendment.
Could you read the motion for?
Motion that the Board of Education of School District Number 71, Comox Valley, direct the superintendent to work with the district student council and the board to develop a process for meaningful involvement of student voice in the work of the board.
Seconded by Vice Chair Howe. Sorry, all those in favor? I was way ahead of myself. That's been carried unanimously. Thank you. I am now going to ask if a trustee could move a motion to extend the meeting by up to 30 minutes to allow for the remainder of the meeting to take place. Are you making that motion for us?
Yep.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Sure.
And all those in favor? Wonderful. I hope you got that motion. Sorry, I was speaking really fast. So we are now to board correspondence, of which there is none. And then we now have public question period to the board. And it is 9 o'clock, and I will ask to see if anybody has electronically submitted a question. No. And I will look to the public and our partner groups that are here tonight to see if you have a question related to the agenda for us tonight.
I asked multiple questions.
You can share the time with your colleagues here today. Some questions are like 10 questions with a semicolon. I think you guys maybe can sort it out amongst yourself.
2 questions.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Easy peasy.
First question is regards to the NIDES review. I'm wondering if the full report will be made available either posted on the website or shared with partner groups.
Superintendent to see if he has the ability to answer that question tonight for us or not.
Yeah, I think actually I'll defer to Superintendent Dixon, who has got a plan for sharing with partner groups.
We intend to offline have a meeting with our unions, partner groups, with the 9 staff to review the report. There is information in the report that has specific details regarding contract with providers. So there is some information that we are cautious to share via posting on the website without either kind of blacking out some names. We can have kind of a offline meeting with each partner group, and that's what we were planning on doing. So going through some of the particulars with yourself and our QB group as well, in kind of a larger meeting with the 9 staff administrators. So you will get an invitation to sit down with the full team.
So just the 2 partner groups, just QP and
To begin with, yes.
my second question was about paper consumption. That's been identified as a concern in terms of climate issue. So I'm wondering if there's been any research into reasons for the paper use. I see the one step that's taken is just trying to make it more difficult to print and have that be the way to limit printing. I'm wondering if there's any research done into why there is so much printing, of whether we can look into modifying those reasons for paper use, that whether it's because of supporting student learning or if it's because of replacing textbooks or other reasons. I wonder if the district's done any research into that.
Thank you for the question. I am going to ask the superintendent if he has the information to answer that question, or has somebody else who may be able to answer it.
Well, I don't want to put too many people on the spot here, but through the chair, I'm not sure, Molly, if you have any other things to add, but if you do, and if not, then we'll get back to you, Sean.
Yeah, I will say that paper consumption does account for about 4% of our emissions, so it's not our, primary focus for reductions. I know that IT has done quite significant work in creating centralized printing stations at all of our sites to sort of change that habit of people having the individual printers nearby. But it's something that we're always looking at every year, how we can improve those 3 admission categories, paper being one.
Can I just add to the additional benefit of not having personal printers, including not having one, for example, in the superintendent's office, is it's also, it's a power saving piece as well. So it's not just designed to get steps in to make it difficult to print, but actually that was a significant discovery of power consumption by having a plugged-in printer over time. So personal printers or printers to small spaces are a significant power draw.
And are there any other questions from the public and partner groups that are here tonight?
The first question of the 3 questions is, what is the past process for seeking PAC prior approval as per the School Act regarding video camera surveillance, and what's the current process? And then the follow-up one is, will the PAC have consultation around the placement of the cameras and the rationale for the placement?
I'm going to look for the superintendent.
Yeah, I'll have trouble answering past practice. What I can assure you is, and the School Act's clear that part of the consultation is around placement and rationale. And that is why in that consultation process, typically, PAC either says, well, that makes sense, and we agree and support it and sign sort of that form that we should have that says that consultation process has occurred. So every PAC should be, particularly as we look at installation of new cameras, should be aware of where the proposal is and actually requires that consultative process, and typically a signature that results that says we share in the consensus of that placement.
Just hang on, they're getting their questions in order.
I have a follow-up question to that on budgeting. So given that if there's a review of all the schools who have been in contravention of the School Act regarding the installation of cameras that have not received PAC approval, will we be going back and looking at that?
So I'm going to start that question, and that it is listed in the School Act that there was a time where this wasn't in the School Act, and so that once it was embedded in the School Act, that is when the process was supposed to take place. And I think we shared tonight, I didn't know when that time was, and so if the superintendent knows the answer to that, then he will be able to share. But I think first we would need to determine when that time frame was, and see, in fact, if any cameras have been installed that didn't follow the process.
I can't answer the specific time, but what I can say is, particularly this is an area that's identified of concern and perhaps an area that we've missed either compliance or consultation, that I'd have no problem asking principals in the fall of this year at one of the first PAC meetings to review with PAC where the placement of existing cameras are, to ensure that the consultation that's required for placement of new cameras, at least there's been a conversation about where those pre-existing ones are, and we can clarify that with PACs and have that as an expectation this fall for principals to review.
Okay, this is number 2. In the current climate that can be quite polarized around certain issues, how will you protect students that are taking a role in potential board and policy arenas from negative public scrutiny and associated vulnerabilities that come from a public stage?
Well, is that question connected to the motion that we just passed, that we're trying to implement a motion or implement a process? So I guess I would start with, as we go through the process, I appreciate you sharing that, so that we include that in the lens that the work is done through. And then I'll have the superintendent probably better answer that question.
Well, I mean, I think that the question is so thoughtful that I think it probably helps shape how students are involved, because I think that when we talk about students, there is nothing more important than the safety and well-being of our students, and we want to make sure that where they are involved, they are safe to be involved and to provide that voice without any recrimination or reprisal. So I think that would be, as we look at how students can work with the board, I think one of the caveats would be ensuring that those parameters of safety are placed around any recommendation for involvement. I also would say that the other piece that's missing is that students are brought into conversations even when it's not their voice that's brought. And so when we have the privilege of sitting with, for example, a district GSA, there's words that can come back to shape action that don't necessarily make any individual vulnerable. I think when we have the privilege of sitting and listening, I think every trustee that was able to participate in the student voice this year felt that privilege of students sharing candidly about their lived experience. That resonates deeply because it's not a cognitive, it's a heart-to-heart conversation. I think, when we look at some of the work that happened in this room with those students, that there was a vulnerability that they were willing to embrace because it was a safe space. But there's ways of capturing that voice and sharing it without necessarily having any of the individual students who are sharing it made additionally vulnerable. And again, so I think I just really appreciate the thoughtfulness of that question. And I think that our intention for sure of elevating and amplifying voice would in no way want to correlate to an amplification of vulnerability.
My last question, which is probably for the finance team through the chair, respectfully. And thank you for your continued efforts to try and make this information more understandable. And drawing on the wealth of experience in the room, does a conservative approach to budgeting for staffing contribute to trends in staffing and surplus? And then how does a conservative approach to staffing translate to site experience?
So I'm going to turn to the Secretary Treasurer And I didn't hear the second part.
How does a conservative approach, because it felt like that was a sort of like a direction one could take, and that it felt like we were pivoting or moving away from that direction into sort of more of like a planning ahead type scenario, but that could be, I'm so much learning how to understand this. But the second part of the question was, how does a conservative approach to staffing, if that's the ethos behind the budget, translate to site experience?
Site experience, thank you. Okay. Sure.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Okay,
Through the chair,
great.
thanks. You know, I think there's a couple things. One is, I think that it's not necessarily a conservative approach to staffing, it's a conservative approach to enrollment projection. Now, that is correlated to staffing. I think where you see, the impacts are this, like when we're at the end of a year and we're talking about significant surplus, that is also a fiscal mismanagement that I'm responsible for, because we are responsible to ensure that every dollar that we have can go to the needs of the students that we're serving. So it's not a great news story. Like but the issue that we also have to face is that when we have a $165 million budget, that a 1% over is 1.6 million. So it sounds like a very extensive amount of money, but when we actually look at the non-staffing issues that have been identified, we're talking about an actual surplus of around $2 million, which is just over 1.2%. So I think the impact are that we all know that there's needs and students who we've underserved or that we haven't served to the fullness of what they require. And so anytime that we understaff by projecting low, we miss a need. So that's the impact, that's the lived experience. I think though, that when we look at our staffing isn't conserved outside of centralized supports. So that also means that there's limited additional supports for teachers in terms of growing capacity, professional development, those subject expertise, subject experts. So for example, you know, this year looking at trying to extend literacy supports. So getting a centralized literacy support teacher isn't actually in the operational budget because it came through an additional enrollment that wasn't projected. And so we are hoping to set aside that specialist in surplus. So the impact is always, and our fear is, you know, every dollar that we have is needed today. And so we want to make sure that it's invested to the best of our ability. So one of the pieces, though, that is incredibly problematic, as you can imagine, is that if we were over optimistic in budgeting and in projected enrollment where we overshot and we were off by 1%, we would need to mid-year find $1.6 million of savings. And when 86% of our budget is staffing, that would mean that we'd be collapsing classes. It would mean that we would be pulling supports. And so the fiscal sweet spot is being around that 1% margin, but not on the bottom, on the wrong side of it. So we want to get that balance right between prudence, but also managing our risk appropriately so that we don't end up in a deficit where I've seen in other districts partway through a year where you're looking for millions of dollars mid-season. And so it's a complex question. I don't know if I've done a thorough enough answer, but there is impacts for sure.
Any more questions? Is it a follow-up?
No. Go brand spanking new, baby. Honestly, there is a question. I know you always worry, but there is a question. So there was a question raised earlier by trustees regarding school fees at high schools, specifically the athletic fees and costs associated with students joining a sport team and representing our district. The SD 71 bus that a team rents from the district to team travel has a rental fee of $175 a day. Those are costs that are then offloaded to families. So if the Board of Education and the Board Office are concerned about those extra costs that are going on to families, potentially the option for a deep review of the fees imposed on students for things like SD 71 vehicle rentals would be a great opportunity for the board to review this practices and lessen choose to lessen the costs of those things for families? There was a question there, but
I was waiting. I was being really super patient. So was there a question I can direct to anybody?
I will reread the question.
Okay, thank you.
It's in the middle. Would the Board of Education see an opportunity to review these practices within the district to lessen the fees for families?
Oh, thank you for the question. And the board can take that question away and can respond to you as a representative of DPAC at a later date.
Wonderful. Thank you kindly.
Okay. Sorry, I missed the question in between.
Fair enough.
And it is like we're in 17 minutes now. Do you?
It's a short one, I think.
Okay, how about final question?
Okay.
Okay. Or checking with, are you guys all good? Final question? Okay.
For the, oh, there it is. Is there a district procedure around lighting? Because it seemed like, through the chair, lighting was referenced in terms of security and cameras quite a lot, exterior lighting. And I was just curious if there's a district procedure around exterior lighting at sites on evenings and weekends.
I believe we have an AP for most things, but not one for lighting, so I don't believe we do.
Seeing no further questions and that we've exhausted the time period for questions, which we always appreciate, once I can hear the question, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Trustee McConnell-Keen.
Second it.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay.